So Scott, it is 8 o'clock and we do have a quorum.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Just remember, please mute your microphones. This will help ensure we do not have any feedback or other background noises to interfere with the speaker. If a committee member would like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature. Please remember to lower your hand once your question has been addressed. When you are ready to speak, please unmute your microphone. This is especially important during votes. Do not forget to mute yourself when finished. As a reminder, audience members are only permitted to speak during the call to the audience unless called upon by the committee. This meeting is being recorded to satisfy the open meeting law requirements. Veronica, call to order and roll call.
Scott Oldendorf,
Here.
Claire Zucker,
Here.
Steve Foley,
Here.
Allison Jones,
Here.
Bill Katzel, Bill, can you hear me? I'll come back to Bill. Scott Cole,
Here.
Matt Mathewson,
Here.
Armando Membria,
Presente.
Asia Philbin,
Here.
Anne-Marie Wolf,
Here.
Bill Katzel.
Here.
And Bill, if you'd mute your microphone again, we got you here present, but when you're not talking, we get some feedback on the noise. If you wouldn't mind, please mute your microphone on the computer. Thanks. Scott, I think you're muted now.
Okay, I'm not muted. I'm okay.
Okay.
All right. Is that it for roll call, Veronica?
Yes.
Okay, very good. It's time for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next is call to the audience. Is there any comments from call to the audience? The only thing, I don't know if I'm allowed to say something during call to the audience, but Jackson, with the Russia-Ukraine thing, potential cyber attacks, it would just be nice to get a little update, if anything, on how we're ready for anything that might come our way in the United States. Any other call to the audience? All right, safety share.
I'm not bailing you guys out this time.
I knew that was going to happen.
I have a safety share. This is Bill. Are you there?
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, Bill.
On Tuesday, we were going to Tucson for a medical appointment on I-19, and there was a 5-car accident that was holding up everything. So I just want to say, stay alert and stay alive.
Very good.
And just remember, winter's not over yet. We might still have more to come. All right, any more safety share? Okay, hearing none, we'll go into approval of the minutes. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any comments, corrections, amendments?
This is Matt. I move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Do I
Second,
have a second?
second,
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 aye,
Aye.
All right, the meetings from January 27, 2022 are so passed. All right, next we have the Sonoran Institute Living River Resort with Claire, and Claire, I'm not going to botch up the name, and Luke Cole.
You don't have to botch Claire's last name because I'm the one giving the presentation. Claire sends her regrets. She's unable to make it. But thank you all for this invitation. We love giving this update for you every year. We look forward to it because it's a nice opportunity for us to show the work that we're doing collaboratively. And now I'll hopefully not spend 5 minutes trying to get my screen shared, but let's see what happens. Hold on one second. If somebody, once it comes up, if somebody could give me a holler if it's showing the wrong mode.
I got it up.
Are you seeing the?
Yes, we can
Living
see
River.
it.
That's correct. You're not seeing like the presenter view version of it?
No, we can see it.
Wow, first time. It never happens like that. Okay, great.
It's just a small view, that's all.
It is small. Okay, so now here we go. This is where it goes wrong. How about that?
Elongate. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. All right. So again, thank you. I wanted to just provide a nice update of not only where our Living River reporting stands, but sort of where the work that we do with Pima County and with RWRD specifically falls within the greater strategy for the Santa Cruz River that Sonoran Institute and our partners, of which you all are one, are working on. So our mission is, our mission is to create a Santa Cruz River that's living and flowing from Mexico to Marana, where it's the foundation of community health and prosperity. And that cannot happen without the work that RWRD does every year with your long-term planning and with your day-to-day activities. So our appreciation right off the bat for you helping us achieve our mission up here in Pima County. To orient you all, here is the Santa Cruz River watershed. As a reminder, the river flows from south to north just because of the geological table, higher elevation closer to the border. We have 3 to 5, depending on how you're looking at it, flowing stretches of the river. Oh boy, did something go wrong? I feel like I'm seeing somebody else's screen now. Can you all see the presentation still?
No, we can't.
Yeah, I wonder.
No.
That's very strange. Let's see.
You've got the entrance screen for getting onto the Zoom or
Yeah,
the
weird. I
Microsoft Team
haven't
meeting.
touched. Are we back?
Yes.
There you go. You're back.
Okay, good, thanks. And where was I? Yeah, okay, so up here in Pima County, right, at least in northern Pima County, we have these 2 stretches of the river, the Heritage flow and then the longer flows that come out of Agua Nueva and Tres Rios. They're about 24, 23 miles of flow perennially, which is more than any other stretches of the Santa Cruz River. So that's the basis of our reporting up here in Pima County. But that's not all we're doing. We're also exploring the creation of an urban wildlife refuge with the Fish and Wildlife Service that could provide and really complement the work that Pima County is doing to draw residents to the border and guests to the river, and to expand the riparian connection for wildlife and for people. Again, the foundation of all of this is the work that RWRD is doing. But this is part of it. We also have some work that's just about to get started here in Green Valley. Sonoran Institute received a Bureau of Reclamation grant for a 2-year assessment of where there are potential river restoration opportunities in this stretch of the river. Not implementation, it's taking a look at the water resources that are currently in this middle stretch of the river, and where there are opportunities in the future to create in-stream or floodplain flows, again, to the benefit of the residents of Pima County and to the environment. And third, we do a lot of work in Santa Cruz County. We have another living river report that we put out for this Nogales reach of the river. So this includes Nogales, Sonora, Nogales, Arizona, and most specifically, the stretch of the river that you're seeing here. The darker colors show where the flow extent is. That's about 14 miles of flow coming out of the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant. We used those reports to also bolster and highlight the infrastructure opportunities that exist in this stretch of the river to potentially create more flows through repairs and additional infrastructure. And with new flows would come another opportunity for river restoration. So those are assessments as well that we're doing. So you can see here that this is a broader strategy that extends beyond the Tucson-Pima County Living River Report. This is a Santa Cruz River strategy, and we're very glad to have RWRD and Pima County as a partner in this broader strategy. So this partnership has been in place now for 10 years. We put out our first Living River Report using research from 2013 that straddled the upgrades to the treatment plants here in Pima County, and we've done one every year since. And this is a reliable, well-used, well-researched report to the benefit not only of Pima County, but also to lawmakers statewide, countywide, citywide. Before I dive into the data, I just want to show you all, this is the map from this year's report. We focus on, there are two stretches of the river. We had a smaller section here about the Heritage Project downtown, but the bulk of the 12-page report, the 10 pages of the 12-page report, focus on the stretches of the Santa Cruz River that come out of the Agua Nueva and Tres Rios plants. And again, just as a reminder, the river flows south to north. So what have we seen? Well, as you all know, the water coming out of Agua Nueva and Tres Rios is and has been of exceptional quality. The water and the upgrades that create that good quality water are essential and are foundational for this riparian ecosystem. So ecosystems are able to succeed and thrive based on stability. And RWRD provides stability of water, of good quality water in this system. And one of the great indicators is, does water quality get better downstream? So you know what's coming out of the end of the outfalls, but what's the environment doing with it? And the environment is adding dissolved oxygen, which is essential for any sort of native fish or macroinvertebrate or even plant species. And ammonia is already very low, and it's getting drawn down as the ecosystem, as the river environment uses up that ammonia. Too much ammonia is toxic to the system. And it used to be around 10 to 20 milligrams per liter, and now we see it steadily 2 or under, which is really useful because ammonia is a useful nutrient. Too much of it, of course, becomes it overwhelms the system and creates a failing ecosystem. But we don't have that problem here anymore because of the work that RWRD is doing. Further, we're seeing increasing diversity as we go downstream. Here we're looking at macroinvertebrates. So this is like the bugs that have part or all of their life cycle in the river. Dragonfly, damselflies, unfortunately mosquitoes, but these are all insects, mayflies, things that you're familiar with. And again, we are seeing good presence, good diversity right at the outfall, but it gets better downstream because of the stability and the steady quality of the water coming out of Agua Nueva and Tres Rios. And like I said, these reports are one thing, but what they are able to demonstrate and be used for is far more profound. So in 2021, Pima County was able to access CEP water for the first time. This conservation effluent pool has existed for about 20 years, but the first ever allocation of water to maintain flows between Agua Nueva and Tres Rios, where there's a variable drying patch in June, just downstream, or sorry, just upstream of the Tres Rios plant, now we'll have a minimum of 5 million gallons a day of water flowing through there because we've been able to demonstrate through our annual fish surveys that the endangered Gila top minnow, which is extremely pollution sensitive, is now seen in all stretches of the river, including this dry stretch of the river. So this is legislation and policy resulting from these living river reports, which can only happen through our partnership with Pima County. So like I mentioned, the Living River Report expanded in 2021. It's now 12 pages. It had been 8. So that's an additional 2-page pickup for Pima County. In addition, this expansion of the partnership resulted in an increase in 40% of distribution of direct mailing to households in Pima County. Now it's 11,000 households receive these reports. The report's also now in Spanish for the first time. And we've added Tucson Water and their heritage stretch, like I mentioned before, to a 2-page section within the 12-page report. So this isn't just a report, it's a model of regional collaboration. Foundational to this stretch to Pima County can only happen through collaboration and partnership. And that collaboration and partnership can also be extremely local. So we saw in October during the Great Day of Caring that we had county, we had city, we had private industry, we had nonprofit groups, we had guerrilla cleanup groups like the Trashy Divas coming out to clean up 3 stretches of the river where in a 2-hour stretch we pulled out about 2 tons of trash from the river. This is incredible, and we're seeing more and more of this. And on that trash topic, Sonoran Institute is now doing an assessment of trash in the Santa Cruz. This came out of Flood Control's Santa Cruz River Management Plan stakeholder and resident engagement over the last couple of years, where people said trash is the #1 concern that they had in the river. So we took that prompt and we're doing an assessment to go to where the trash is to find out what the trash is made out of as the first stage. And then in the future, we'll be looking at what the overall load of trash is in the river to help Pima County find ways to address the trash, address it at its source, and remove it either from the river or prevent it from getting into the river. And some funding from that came from Flood Control. And we'll see you out there at the cleanup on March 4th. Our intern from UA, Jamie, will be coming out, and she'll be running a few transect assessments of the trash that's there, and we'll be providing support to help clean up trash. So we appreciate that you all are doing that, and for the invitation to attend and do some research while we're there. Outreach also, or collaboration also looks like outreach. We have had 2 successful Dragonfly Days in October 2020 and 2021. Again, on the bottom here, lots of participation through Pima County NRPR, and the town of Marana, as well as UA and Mission Garden. This is an opportunity for people to get out, to learn about what's happening in the river as a result of the steady, good quality water that's coming out of Agua Nueva and Tres Rios. And we plan to do this again this year, and we're getting bigger and better with every year that we do this. In 2022, we're going to be showcasing some Pima County priorities. Certainly, we'll be showcasing the RWRD sustainability mission, your upcoming technological improvements to capture biogas. So there's now an angle toward that hadn't been in there before. We're also going to be focusing on the El Rio Preserve, increased bird habitat, and wildlife. I've just recently learned that there's a bobcat family that spends some time, I'm not sure if it's at the West Center or where, but there's some great photography of this parent and cub around the patio, climbing trees, just being charming. So this is a really nice human touch, and another reason that people will pick up these reports to learn more about what RWRD is doing. And again, all of this, the purpose of all of this is to benefit Pima County taxpayers and the environment, right? right? That's the charge. So this provides Pima County as an entity with year-round promotion, public relations, direct marketing, like I noted, 11,000 households and more are receiving these reports. Our email blast of this goes out to an additional 9,000 people, and it's broadcast repeatedly, tagging Pima County on our 10,000 plus social media contacts. So it's tags like this, where we're tagging our Spanish residents, our Spanish-speaking residents, our English-speaking residents, folks who are interested in the work we're doing around collecting trash and other outreach events like Dragonfly Day. We also provide a reliable media-compatible resource for managers. These are just a small snapshot of the various media interviews and pieces that have been done about the Santa Cruz River, where all of these highlight the work that RWRD and Pima County are doing to create these flows in the Santa Cruz River and what that means for the community. This also provides reliable data on continued habitat improvements. These are things that can be touted by legislators, by directors, by representatives to say, hey, this is important. Look at what we're doing and look at what it's doing for our taxpayers and for the environment. We're focusing on recreational use in the reports now. Outreach happens throughout the year beyond just Dragonfly Day, beyond just media. We're giving presentations like this one to interested groups throughout the county and throughout the state, and a respected, relied upon platform where directors can identify their policy priorities and get those into the report. And
Hey,
the
Luke,
report, yes?
I just see that Allison has her hand up. Can we get her question in here real quick?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hi, I was just wondering what your average daily flows are from Agua Nueva and Tres Rios, and how far downstream the distance it flows.
Yeah, so I have those from the report. Let's see. Actually, Jackson, do you have that handy?
Yeah,
I know it's in here, but I'm.
so we typically run around
Oh, here we go.
5 million gallons a day at Agua Nueva. It's a little bit more than that at times, but just let's say 5 million gallons a day. And that flow does not typically make it all the way to the Tres Rios discharge. So there's a stretch that's dry in there. Tres Rios is closer to 30 million gallons a day, and that flows well into Marana, but I don't know where it ends at what point, but basically seldom does it leave our AMA or Pima County anymore. It used to, but mostly it stays here, other than maybe during rain events or other times like that where there's additional flow in the river. Does that answer your question, Allison?
It does. And what's the distance between Agua Nueva and Tres Rios? Just
I
curious.
think that's also about 5 miles, if my
Okay.
memory serves me right.
All right, thank you. It seems like an odd question, but I'm working on some other projects, and we're dealing with surface water distances and discharges, and just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'd encourage you to check out our Living River reports because they're not only just the 12-page reports, but we do a data detailed supplemental report that
Thank
goes
you so
along
much.
with these, that goes into flows and things like that.
I will do that.
Great. So year after year, these are adjustable reports. These change every year. They're hardly static. And we are able to showcase different county priorities year after year. And we can start looking toward long-term priorities where we can lay the seeds, lay the foundation for upcoming work so that residents will see the development of these priorities year after year. So like I noted, some of those report priorities upcoming are going to be your sustainability mission, biogas capture, wildlife, a focus on wildlife, the brand new El Rio Preserve, which should have some water flowing into it any day now, if not already, and increased bird habitat, because this is a huge eco-regional tourism hotspot for bird watching. And I mentioned at the beginning this idea of creating a Santa Cruz River Urban Wildlife Refuge. We are exploring how to do this, working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to create they call it an anchor property, or a site that could really function as the headquarters, but that would be reflective of the overall urban Santa Cruz River community. So this is not a proposal to build it. This is a proposal to bring in U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to consider the possibility of creating one of these refuges. So it's sort of it's a case study, or almost like a promotional option. So the two sites that have come to mind in working with our partners are the landfill site at the base of Sentinel Peak by the Caterpillar building and Mission Gardens, and then potentially the decommissioned Roger Road site, because it sounds as though there's some work that RWRD is doing to consider converting that into a park, and we have really welcomed the opportunity to talk about that collaboratively. The breakouts that you're seeing here are census tracts, because we want to demonstrate that there's a demographic need for connection to the environment, particularly for disproportionately affected by environmental justice communities, and census tracts provide the best data for that. And I also want to encourage folks to attend our Santa Cruz River Research Days. This is happening on March 24th and 25th of this year. The link is down below. We have just launched registration for that. Our focus this year is going to be the culture and archaeology of the Santa Cruz River, but that is not all that the presentations are. We have presentations on ecology and wildlife and arts and restoration. So some real strong science, some real interesting art and culture and archaeology in here, and I would encourage you all to attend. If you can, it will be virtual, and then we'll have a field trip happening on Friday afternoon at Mission Garden after they close, so it will be all to us. So this Living River partnership, it's a winning team. We're more than just Living River reports. We share this long-term vision.
Todd Oldendorf.
And we encourage RWRD and this advisory committee to be part of something bigger. There's more than just Pima County to this living river, to the Santa Cruz River. There's a lot happening, and all of these pieces hold together beautifully. So the more we can maintain this partnership, the better we'll be doing for the taxpayers of Pima County, for the Santa Cruz River at large, and also provide opportunities for us to leverage our successes for other restoration opportunities like we've done so far. So I will leave it at that. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry if I went a little bit over. If there's time for questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Hey, Luke, Claire has
Thank you
her
very
hand
much,
up.
Luke.
Of course.
We had some questions midstream. I was kind of waiting toward the end of your discussion. We have two people that have questions. First is Claire Zucker. She has a question.
Hey, Claire.
Hi, Luke. Trying to figure out how to put my hand down. There we go. Yeah, this is just such fabulous work, and I just really commend Pima County and Soren Institute for doing this. It's just so important. It's landmark work, and especially the time frame. I have a question about the Urban Wildlife Refuge.
Sure.
And I'm interested if there are other effluent dependent streams that have designations such as this. I'm interested in the criteria and sort of the timeline for how this would happen.
So there may be, but under the current structure that Fish and Wildlife Service is putting into the urban wildlife refuges, there's only one other, and it's the Valle de Oro site in Albuquerque. They converted a dairy farm that was surrounded by brownfield and Superfund sites into one of these urban wildlife refuges, because they spent about a decade trying to secure the property so that it could become the base for this urban wildlife refuge. So the process right now, we've been developing this proposal for about 8 months or so. I'm going to be getting it back to Fish and Wildlife, to our partners who are connected with Fish and Wildlife tomorrow. Following that, that's when the Fish and Wildlife Service gears start to turn. We've already been talking with Fish and Wildlife Service. They're very interested in the Santa Cruz. So this will give them the initial ammunition that they need to start really digging in to see where there are opportunities. We're just kind of basically doing the background work for them to justify why the Santa Cruz would work well for an urban wildlife refuge. So I can't give you much in the way of specifics of what we can expect for next steps, but it sounds like the gears are already turning. So
That's so cool.
absolutely keep you looped in, Claire.
And you chose these particular areas because there's sufficient space off the river to build something significant. Is that right?
That's right. And again, this is very like sort of academic at this point. You know, like we've talked a little bit with the Rio Nuevo owners for the landfill site, right? Like that's a politically fraught spot, but boy, it'd be right downtown. How cool would that be? And it would really complement the work that is happening on that part of the bank. And then through our Living River partnerships, understanding that there's some preliminary work happening at the Roger Road site and looking for opportunities to talk with the county about how we may be able to sort of overlay our shared efforts to create something bigger and more impactful and more permanent at that Roger Road site. So again, very academic, but coming by parcels sizable enough along the river, hard, really hard to do, particularly in the urban core.
Thank you very much.
And just to follow up, Luke, the Roger Road and the landfill, that was to do what again?
That's to create, to serve as sort of an anchor property or like a headquarters for an urban wildlife refuge.
Okay, thank you. Matt has a question. Or I'm sorry. No, hold on, Matt. Jeff was next in line, I think.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Luke, I just wanted to reach out to you and Claire. March 8th next week, you're probably already aware of this, but for those of you that aren't, on March 8th, we're partnering with the University of Arizona to do a research study on how pollutants traverse the river. So they're going to be
dye test, the rhodamine test?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure you guys are out there, maybe get some photos, because that'd be a nice page in next year's report showing this community partnership and collaboration.
Yeah, that is absolutely. And that for me is such great old school science that remains so extremely important. And yeah, I love a good rhodamine dye test, and we will certainly be up there.
The photos could be great for your report.
Oh yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great recommendation, Jeff.
And Matt had a question.
Yes, really more of a comment than a question. Luke, great presentation, and really appreciate your acknowledgement of Pima County's and particularly the department's contribution to this and the underlying cause for the improvement in the health of the river. I assume when you give presentations to other audiences, you give likewise credit, and just again wanted to thank you and remind you that government agencies need a lot of help these days. So we appreciate the good words.
Having worked in government before starting here, Matt, I get it. We are whether it's a media interview or a presentation or whatever it is, we are always crediting our partners and our funders, RWRD being one of the major ones. So yeah, you're always in there for sure. Happily.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody else have a question for Luke?
Hey, it's really for Jeff to work on that date of the dye test and do it on St. Patrick's Day, and you can guess what color you could use.
Rhodamine does come out green. You get that St. Patrick's Day bit for just a second before it turns red.
Okay, Armando has a question.
Yeah, I just wonder, when are you guys going to get around to having it able to fish out of there like trout or bass? I'd like to stay closer to home.
Armando, we're working on it. I can tell you, we're slowly reintroducing native fish. There was the top minnow has been in the river now since 2017, but they're being added. So we're kind of working from the ground up. There's some conversation about introducing dace and potentially chub in the years upcoming. So we're getting bigger and bigger. So let's plan on trout by 2030.
Thank you.
Okay, Luke, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Kind of a personal question. I have my own fish pond at my own home, and I'd like to really, I've been blessed to have occasionally dragonflies, but and I've tried to read up on dragonflies and their incubation time but is there any way to get dragonflies and get it introduced into our local ponds?
Hmm. Dragonflies tend to find the water on their own. So I guess where you have, I mean, if you have vegetation kind of along the periphery, that's going to help. I do think that they like moving water more than still water, so that may limit the number of species that you're seeing. But the fact that you're seeing any dragonflies bodes well for more dragonflies coming. And they're very seasonal. They love it when it's hot, hot, hot. So that might be the time of year that you're not out there fishing because the fish like to stay low. And but it's a really good sign. But introducing dragonflies, I don't know if that's something that happens or can happen. I don't know. I'll find out for you, Scott.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have a question for Luke? Well, Luke, thank you very much. Very informative and very good.
Great. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Jackson, as always, thank you for the invitation. Love giving these, and anytime that something like this comes up, we're happy to give it. So reach out anytime, and we'll be sure to do the same. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, now for our Supreme Commander, our Director, Jackson Jenkins. He's going to tell us all about the biogas update and the CIP.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. And Scott, there's an old adage, you can lead a dragonfly to water, but you can't make him drink, just so you know. I'll start with biogas. I'm super excited about biogas. Jeff and his team and Jaime and the CIP group, they've done a great job in getting that thing going. You know, we had a ribbon cutting, I think it was October of 21 when we had the ribbon cutting, and worked through startup bugs and the normal challenges with a complex plant and facility like that one. And for the most part, that facility has been running since the beginning of the new calendar year and is running now. We're still arguing a little bit with the contractor that built it. Some of their controls or some of their instrumentation has not been tied in with our SCADA system to give us a little more control and better ease of troubleshooting. But we're working on wrapping that up with or without that contractor. So that's the only last item. But for the most part, it's been running nearly full capacity. And the most important part from my arena that I thought you would be interested to hear is the timing has been pretty good from the market for the value of the RIN credits or the renewable energy index numbers that we sell those credits through a marketer that we have. And my estimate right now based on the market is that at the current rate, we're making about $10,000 a day running that biogas facility. So if the market were to stay at that level and we continue to operating, you know, the way we are with the final tweaks being made, you know, we could make over $3.5 million of revenue from that source alone. And just, and you know, from a thermal, you know, or from a kilowatt equivalent or comparing it to our electrical energy, the value of that energy it's like 5% or so of our total energy needs. But for electricity being the lion's share, and we pay over $6 million a year for our electrical needs, yet we're selling a small portion of this gas for maybe $3.5 million. Again, it's all driven by the market, and I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but it's really nice to see that this wonderfully sustainable project, a beautiful project, a lot of hard work went into the project, and now we are seeing the fruits of our labor. And we are not using any of our own gas because the market is such a good market. We're selling it all. And because we do need some gas for our heating needs at that facility, we're buying commercial natural gas for a lot less than we're making on selling our renewable biogas. So just really a great thing. And Jeff, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add or any comments you had, but great job for you and Jaime's team pulling that together. So thank you guys. Okay. That's all I have on that one. And then CIP, it's an agenda item number 3, and I don't want to steal Asia's thunder or not get into discussion, but I just wanted to clarify for this group. This is a tremendously challenging year with inflation at the levels that we're seeing, some added processes to our system, such as the biogas system. We're seeing a lot of upward pressures on our budget. And in our CIP arena, we typically, we're always playing this little massage game of trying to spread out some of the projects so we don't overly burden any single year with capital, the volume or dollars of capital that we have. But in our internal conversations, we know that's not the best thing to do on the big term picture, because you're stretching projects out where you're adding overhead longer than you should have to add. And so really you're adding some extra dollars to a project in the long run. So in this most recent iteration and the capital project that the CIP you're going to discuss today, it's the same projects that you've had in front of you and have been discussing previously, but we massaged a few of the projects to where instead of doing it in 4 years, we're going to do it in 2. We looked at them from an optimization perspective of how would be the best way to deliver the project from a cost perspective and the potential benefit it provides to our utility. And so there's some minor tweaks in that regard. And then also, as I mentioned, that horrible word of inflation, we did, as we're getting closer to moving on some of our upcoming projects, we've got new cost estimates. And so we had to tweak some of those cost estimates upward, of course. And so all in all, I think it was about from the previous model or CIP program you saw, we've added about 10 million more dollars total, mostly for inflation. There was a little bit of scope on one project, but mostly for inflation. The largest portion of that 10 million is next year. I think it was about $4 million increase to the CIP. But we think it's a very reliable program, a very appropriate, efficient program to minimize some of our cost and deliver the things we need to do. And of course, we can get into any discussion when we get to the item 3, the subcommittee report, and any questions or comments or discussion this committee wants to have. We'll be happy to have them. But I just wanted to throw that out there on my comments, just to give you a heads up. And that's all I have for my update, Scott. You're muted, Scott. We can't hear you. You're muted, Scott. Scott, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry about that, Jackson. Just some clarification. You said you had to adjust the CIP budget for inflation. What was it, 4 million or 10 million? What was that?
I think all of our total adjustments came out to about a 10 million for the 5-year CIP. And of that 10 million, 4 of it was impacted next year. The other 6 drug out over the remaining 4 years of the CIP.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Does anybody else have a question for Jackson? Jackson, like I said at the beginning, could you give us a little update about cyber security and how we're doing, especially now that Russia decided to invade Ukraine, and potential for the United States?
Unfortunately, Scott, I get fingers shaken at me if I try to discuss non-agenda items. We did give an update on that, and we'll be happy to give another one, but we continue to have our internal activities and reviews and discussion on that topic. So we feel we're in good shape in general, but if you want to get into that as a presentation, we'll have to put it on a future agenda.
Veronica, we might have to consider that, but at least Jackson, you're saying you feel we're okay.
That's correct.
Something happens.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have an additional question for Jackson? Okay, thank you very much, Jackson. Now we'll get into more detail about the CIP with the subcommittee report from Asia. So Asia, it's all yours.
Thank you, Scott. And I think sorry, I'm having problems with my technology. So Jackson kicked that off, I think, with the note about the change upward in some of the forecast. Last time we met as a full committee, we talked about the subcommittee having met in January and the desire to approve the CIP program. However, people had not had a chance to look at that. So we're going to look at that this month, and I think that I would just open it up to any questions that people have. I think we have all of the Eric and Jeff and Jaime are all here. If we have any questions about any of the specific projects, which I think, as Jackson said, have not changed. I see Matt has his hand up. Do you want to?
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Probably a question for Jaime. I remember that our camera screening program typically results in a list of potential projects or problem areas that are graded with different risk factors. And as I recall, the highest risk factor was 5 and the lowest was 1. I'm wondering if those are the right numbers. Where are we standing as far as kind of the overall health of the system? Do we have any 4s or 5s that continue to crop up, or are we managing, working on 3s? How is our experience with that program?
You're muted, Jaime. Jaime, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, here we go. So we're about 60% of that cycle, 10-year cycle on the small diameter pipe, which is 15 and below. We completed, or we're about to complete this calendar year or fiscal year, the first 5-year interceptor review. So by the end of this fiscal year, we would have reviewed all the pipe that's bigger than 15 inches in diameter. So every time they go out, and as you know, pipe degrades, there's no stopping that. So we always have a 4 or a 5 that pops up. They're not, it's not often. And what that triggers is they pop up to the top of the repair list. And if you look in our CIP program, we have a TRP XX, TRP 22, 23, and so on. So that bucket of money is there to take care of those repairs that just pop up and without planning. And what happens is they are addressed on that same fiscal year where they're encountered. So as they find them, they crop up to the top of the repair list, and they're addressed with this repair program. So to answer your question, they always pop up, pipe degrades, so there's no stopping that. What we do is, as soon as we find them, we raise them in priority and we address them.
Okay, thank you, Jaime. Thanks, Asia.
Anybody else have a question for Matt? I'm for Asia, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Asia. Appreciate the input. Next on the, yes?
I was wondering if anybody had any other questions. Excuse me, Scott. Do you think about the capital projects and if we wanted to take a vote on it this month? What's your pleasure or thoughts on that?
Jackson, you got some input on that?
I think, it's the projects are the same as were previously discussed and reviewed. We were kind of hoping this month there would be any additional questions or discussion necessary to get the committee to vote on approval or not approval. Yes, we did tweak some dollars, which, you want to approve the most realistic, up-to-date budget, and our CIP budget that we're proposing includes some updated inflational values, as I already mentioned, as well as some timing of the spending that was tweaked a little bit, but it doesn't significantly change what we've submitted other than my previous comments. So as Asia just mentioned, we would like for you guys to act on it and support it or endorse it if you're so inclined. And next month, on the agenda will be our financial plan using this CIP data, as well as the rate workbook and the things that get into the nitty gritty part of our budget. And I don't want to steal next month's thunder, but that's what we'll be talking about. At any rate, this one, I think it's, from our perspective, it's good. We're ready to go with it. We would just like your endorsement. Potentially now would be a good time, but it's up to you guys.
This is Matt. I'll offer a motion that the committee support the 1 and 5 year plans for the capital improvement program as submitted today by the department, and express our support to the Pima County Board of Supervisors for ultimate approval of the plan.
Do I
I
have a second? Was there a
Second the
second?
motion.
Yes, I second.
Okay. All in the favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Any abstains? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Asia. So hopefully that'll give you the ability to go ahead, Jackson. Okay, anything else for Asia?
This is Anne Marie. Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
In the
go for
past,
it.
we've actually drafted a letter stating that we reviewed the plans, the 5 and the 10 year, and that we reviewed them in our meetings and that we voted for our support of the programs. I mean, to the Board of Supervisors, is that something we want to do this year? Because we aren't actually approving the capital improvement projects. We're just supporting the plans that were presented to us. So in the past, it's come from the chair to the Board of Supervisors stating that we reviewed them and that we support them. So I'm suggesting that we do that again this year since we just approved it.
Yep. Great recommendation, Anne Marie. And Scott, if you're so inclined, we'll draft up a document to that effect for your signature if you agree.
Yes, that'd be fine with me to go ahead and draft that up.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Any other questions for Asia? Thank you, Asia. I appreciate that detail. Next on the agenda is the rate workbook review with Michelle. All yours, Michelle.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I am here to present the most recent draft of the fiscal year 22 rate workbook. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Thank you. As we discussed at our last meeting, one of our goals is to ensure that we keep our current credit ratings. In order to do that, one of our main objectives was to ensure that the rate workbook maintained a rating agency ratio of 1.3 or above and an unrestricted cash balance of 50 million or more. To achieve this, finance worked with the department to update the revenue, expense, and CIP assumptions utilized within the workbook. The revenue and expense assumptions are presented in the top section of the workbook. They include the population estimates, user and connection fee rates, and O&M costs. They can be found in this top section. The CIP and debt issuance assumptions are included at the bottom of the workbook. The CIP costs are utilized to determine the amount of debt that is issued each year. And the CIP assumptions are at the bottom. And those are the CIP projects agrees to what was just approved by the RWAC. So those are already included in this workbook. The main changes that have occurred since our last workbook, so a year ago, are due to the department's biogas revenue. As Jackson stated earlier, those have been increased. In our current plan, we've increased them from 1 million to 2 million. Like Jackson said, they could even increase more based on what they are seeing in the marketplace. For O&M and for the O&M costs, we went ahead and we have added new assumptions from last year. So right now you can see that next year, the budget currently has a 5.5% increase in O&M costs. We have a 3% increase in 24 and a 2.5% increase in 25. As Jackson stated, that is primarily due to the 5% raise that was approved by the board for fiscal year 23, as well as inflation costs. In regards to CIP costs, those two have increased over the past over the past 5 years. For fiscal year 22 through 27, those amounts have actually increased from last year's plan to this year's plan by the tune of about 80 million. And because those have increased, we now have to obviously adjust our debt that is associated with those numbers. So finance reviewed the workbook and changed basically the way that we are defeasing the debt. So that is in this section. We also went ahead and changed how we are issuing debt. And what I mean by that is we've changed all of the assumptions from the maturities. So in the past plan, we were trying to decrease the maturity dates for all of our debt that was issued. We were going from a 10-year to a 9-year to an 8-year, all the way down to a 5-year. We have now changed that. Anything that is currently being issued for greater than 60 million, we are using a 15-year maturity. And anything that is less than 60 million, we are currently using a 10-year maturity in order to keep that rating agency ratio where we need it, as well as the unrestricted cash balance. By adjusting all of the revenues and the debt defeasance and debt issuances, we are currently able to absorb the increases within the plan for the O&M and for the CIP. So I am pleased to say that we are not recommending any rate increases at this time. Are there any questions?
Matt, you had a question?
I'm sorry, I had my hand up from before, but yes, I do, as it turns out. Michelle, I apologize for not being able to remember. What are the factors in the rating agency ratio? What's the numerator and denominator there?
Basically what, if you go to the plan, what it is it's the net revenues divided by the debt service payments. And that is what gets to the rating agency ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Does anybody have an additional question for Michelle? Well, Michelle, thank you very much for all the good work. I guess the bottom line is no rate increase is needed, and that's what all of our county supervisors all want to hear.
You know, and just so it doesn't just seem as simple as Michelle made it sound, you know, her team had to work into the midnight hours on many days, you know, juggling these numbers. And it wasn't just juggling numbers. I think she said it was flaming chainsaws trying to make it all come out into alignment, but they did a great job to get us to this point. So thanks, Michelle and the finance group.
Thank you.
Well, Michelle, if you did the flaming chainsaws, you didn't get cut, you look great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle. Next on the agenda is going to be the financial subcommittee with Matt. What do you have to inform us about?
Well, Scott, hate to disappoint you, but the committee has not met during the past month. And so we have a negative report from the committee for this month.
Okay, very good. Did
Hey,
anybody
Scott.
have? Go ahead,
Scott.
Jackson.
Yeah, and I just want to bring it up. I wouldn't be doing my job, you know, I've never been personally a strong supporter of the subcommittees because we end up talking about all these topics in the main committee, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. And again, in light of no rate increases, it's up to the committee, of course, but if you don't need the subcommittee, I would suggest you table them or put them on the sideline or do something going forward. But again, up to you, but that would be a recommendation.
Any comment, Matt?
Nothing in particular. We have acknowledged that viewpoint in the past and considered it worthwhile to at least keep the subcommittees in reserve in case we need them. But certainly, I don't argue with Jackson's point that that the need has become at least marginal under the current environment.
Anne Marie has a question.
No, I just wanted to have a comment. And, you know, when we formed the subcommittees, we were going through a lot of rate changes and a lot of financial changes in the department. And I believe the subcommittees serve a good purpose, but I do believe they can, you know, come and go as in a sense when we need them. And I think the financial subcommittee, when and if we ever get to rate changes, either way, up or down, we should have the financial subcommittee, because I remember those in the past, the financial subcommittees we went very much into the details versus what was at the main meeting. So I think especially when we're looking at rate changes or policy changes or things like that for finances, I think the finance subcommittee serves a really good purpose. Plus, I know for me, it gave me really an in-depth knowledge of the background and the finances and how the department gets its money and what things are, things that I never picked up on my, what am I now, 20 years on the committee or something like that. For the capital improvement subcommittee, I think it serves two purposes. We actually do go more into depth. Plus, we've got that in our, I don't know what you call it, our charter or ordinance, that we do that 5 and 10 year review. So it meets that requirement as well. And you know, we have 2 meetings a year. I don't honestly think that's overly burdensome. So that's just my input, but Jackson, you've heard that before, so you probably could have given my little talk as well. So that's just my thing. You know, with no rate changes, I mean, it's up to the financial subcommittee if they want to continue meeting right now. Mm-hmm.
And Armando has a question.
Well, actually, I also have a comment on the committee that I sit on. One of the things I found healthy about the committees is we get a lot of information in a meeting, general meeting, and it appeared to me that every time we got the information and we approved everything, it was nothing but a rubber stamp because we didn't understand a little bit better what the information was about, so to speak. And I was reluctant to join the financial committee, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And when I got on that committee, I was astounded to know how much, or to learn how much I didn't know. Um, and so to me, it was quite an eye opener. And at the time that we were very busy, I realized that it's not a rubber stamp because we had people on there that would uh, dissect every little piece of information that came through. And I thought it was overkill at times, but then at other times I thought, no, this isn't overkill. This is pretty important. And then we'd bring it back to the big committee. I think there's a need for that. Uh, Even after the rate changes, the financial committee met and reviewed other things. It's helped me to understand the big picture a little better than I did before. Not that I understand it terrifically at all, but I just think that we still need to have the committees. If we meet twice a year just to review things, even though we're not looking at rate increases, we're getting into the point where we're making money on biogas and possibly some other areas, and that should be part of the financial committee's undertaking, just to, like, an oversight committee is what I see it as. But that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Armando. Veronica, should we be listing the financial subcommittee on every month if it's only just being mentioned about twice a year?
Yes, the committee actually requested that the agenda list both subcommittees at each meeting in case there is an update that needs to be given or they want to speak to something regarding the subcommittees. It's on the agenda, because
Okay.
if it's not on the agenda, we can't discuss it.
Understand. Okay, anything else for the financial subcommittee? Okay, thank you, everyone. On to the next item. It's the fiscal year 2021 and 22 expense and revenue summary by Mandy. Mandy, it's all yours.
Good morning. I'll share my screen with you real quick. So this view is more of a very granular view as far as, because we're just looking at one fiscal year. So as of period 7, with 7 accounting cycles into the period, we have our adopted budget that doesn't change. We're at 86.5 in their O&M. Right now, we have a forecast of 86.3 overall. So just slightly below what we had budgeted in that particular line item. What's driving that savings is the personnel services, the main driver. So what the plan is to use some of those savings and advance some of the other spending in their supplies and services category. The total O&M is 165 million. We're projecting right now at 164.7. So overall, a slight savings overall in the program budget. Total revenue, we have a adopted budget of 187.1, and we're projecting to be at 185.7. The main driver of that reduction in the revenue projection is biogas didn't come up to speed as quickly as the department had anticipated, but it is running now. Are there any questions in regards to the summary view?
Hey, Mandy, this is Jackson. On
Sure.
that biogas, because it's kind of strange how and when we make the actual sales and recognize a revenue, I'm guessing you haven't seen any or minimal amount of revenue so far in the 7 months so far?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I would just like a clarification. Jackson, you said that we were making about, trying to find on my notes here, $10,000 a day, potentially up to $3 million a year. That's revenue, but then Mandy, you're not seeing any of the revenue coming in yet?
As of period 7, no.
Yeah, so we didn't really get up and running until January, and because our so all that you said, Scott, is correct and accurate, and that's based on the market today. It could change tomorrow. So it's very volatile. We just need to see how things happen, and especially in light of current events in the geopolitical scene of the world. But the company that we have that markets our gas, it's a marketing firm for many other entities like ourselves that produce renewable fuels or a certain type of gas, and they package them together and go out on the market and get the most they can for those. Because we're just a little player in this big market, and so they represent many firms, and they package big lots together also to help garner the best price. And then that's when, once they make that happen and then they get a check from that entity they sell it to, then it will make its way back to us. So things are kind of in the rears. And so just to show how we did this year, we've indicated to the marketing firm that unless there's some reason why, if we wait an extra month or two, we'd like to make sure they make at least one, if not more than one sale before the end of the fiscal year, so we can credit that revenue to our account this fiscal year as we close the books later in the year. But I'm expecting those checks probably won't come in till, late in the fiscal year, or at least be recorded late in the fiscal year, and the check will show up shortly thereafter. In the future, as this gets to be a more steady process, we'll probably make quarterly sales. But that's just how it is starting off. And so the numbers I gave you are the market value of the gas we're producing, but the checks have not made their way. They're on their way to the post office, but they're not quite yet in the mail. So
good analogy.
Yeah, and this approach that we're taking is more on the conservative side, in the thought that the check might not arrive before June 30. So just having that, not an assurance of when that's going to come in. So that's kind of more what we're reporting here in the summary level.
Okay, very good.
Any other questions?
Any questions for Mandy?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Appreciate it. Next, we've got the Citizen Water Advisory Committee, the CWAC report with Allison. Allison, it's all yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. The first thing I wanted to bring up to you guys from CWAC is, just as I am the CWAC rep to this body, RUAC has a seat on CWAC. And Jackson, you have usually filled that role, but the timing of the meetings has changed. And so they just wanted me to express to you that if you want to appoint someone to attend CWAC meetings in your place, they would welcome that involvement. So just feel free to think about that. And if you have someone who can attend CWAC meetings, I believe it's the first Wednesday of the month at 8 a.m.
And just real quick, Allison, just to comment that, that time frame is the same time this department holds its senior management meeting. And so the people that would be delegated or designated to go in my place, they're all tied up in those communications that are taking place. And it's unfortunately the best time for that group of people to get together. So we've even looked at changing them, and it's just not real flexible. We do have Kathy Chavez and Colby Bowser involved in those meetings. They're not wastewater employees, but they are county employees, and they're involved in some of the water and wastewater discussions. And I'm sure Kathy, for the most part, will continue to be there. And, I may just look at asking her to be the appointee to that group for the time being, because unless the date or time changes significantly, the day of the week or the time, we're just struggling to make it work out.
I understand, and I'll convey that back to the group. They wanted me to make sure you knew that they would like to see somebody there from this group, and maybe appointing someone like Kathy Chavez is the way to go for now. So let me run this back by them. Thank you. We met on February 2nd, and as of then, there were 105 Tucson Water Department vacancies. There are 23 active recruitments, 43 pending hires. During the previous month, potable and reclaim production was slightly above normal, but pretty close to normal. And reclaim water production in January and December was not as big a reclaim month as the previous year. We have a lot of new people on CWAC being appointed, so we went over just the role of CWAC and the subcommittees, and then we had a presentation on the 5-year financial plan. The financial planning objectives and metrics are that one, it has to cover O&M and CIP. The CIP is projected at about $80 million annually. They need to have a positive annual net revenue, maintain $20 million infrastructure fund balance to address unpredicted infrastructure needs, and maintain a debt coverage of 175% of debt requirements. Consumption feeds into the plan, and that's really hard to predict. There's a 2-year increasing trend in water consumption. Fiscal year 29 was 9% over, fiscal year 21 was 9% over fiscal year 20, but fiscal year 2022 is down so far. And it's proving to be difficult to predict how the tier 1 and tier 2 shortages are going to impact differential consumption, and also differential rates. How will that impact consumption? As I said, the fiscal year 2023 requested O&M budget is $207 million, and the CIP budget is $85 million. They're working on scenarios about how a tier 3 cap shortage might affect all this. So there's going to be more discussion in the financial subcommittee this month. There was some discussion about customer assistance programs for Tucson Water, and they have several of these programs. There's a payment extension program. They set up payment plans. They make courtesy adjustments. They'll allow one every 3 years per customer. They have rebates and incentives, low-income assistance programs, special hardship emergency funds for job loss or death, and a safety net program for customers in crisis. The low-income assistance program started in 2012. I did not manage to capture how many people participate in that program, so I'm sorry, I'll try and find that. And that was a brief summary of the February 2022 CWAC meeting.
Well, thank you very much, Allison. Does anybody have any questions for Allison? Okay, thank you, Allison, for that report. That was great detail. Next is future agenda items. So does anybody have anything that they want to put on the future agenda? And I just mentioned just a little bit of an update, Jackson, about cyber. So that would be just kind of nice with our world condition that we're under. Okay, any last minute requests for future agenda? Okay, we'll go right into call to the audience. Anybody have any comments from call to the audience? Okay, hearing none, unless anybody has anything else to comment on, do I have an motion for an adjournment?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstains? Anybody want to go home?
I am home.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. See you next month. Oh, and
Bye-bye.
also
Good
just
meeting.
let everybody know the next month is on March 24th.
Thank you.